right, welcome back to another episode of Focus on EDU, EdTech and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko from CDW Education, and today I've got somebody from up north, Rolland Chidiac from the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. He is a re-engagement teacher, and when he and I were chatting on Twitter and he had said something about being a re-engagement teacher, I had to dig in. So we have got Rolland coming in today. So Rolland, tell us a little bit about your background in education.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. It's good to be here. I was certified to teach in Ontario in the year 2000, which is a long time ago. And then since then, um, funny story, I started my career as an educator in alternative education. Well, it was adult education, but doing using alternative strategies and things of that nature. And that's where I find myself right now. So I belong to the alternative education program here in Waterloo with the Catholic District School Board. But when I started teaching I was certified in 2000, did my master's degree in counseling, and then moved from Ottawa to Waterloo, and have been in the classroom ever since. When this position came up 2 or 3 years ago, um, I read the description. I was happy. I was in my classroom. It was near the end of a school year. I read this description and I think to myself, this is the perfect job for me. And I took a chance, and here I am. I'm out of the classroom and I'm doing re-engagement, and it's been a fantastic 2 years. I'm going into my third year now of being a re-engagement teacher in the system.
Love it. So let's start with what I think is the most obvious first question, which is what is a re engagement teacher and how does that differ from the teaching that you did before?
So in my district, what the re-engagement position looks like now is I work with students who don't attend school at all or who attend inconsistently, and my focus is grade 7 and 8 students. So this last year was grade 7 and 8 students. This coming year, it's 7 and 8 students. But before last year, it was grade 7 to 12, and there were two of us, and basically it worked on a referral basis. Schools who had data on students who were either not attending at all or who were attending inconsistently due to COVID and the issues that came with the pandemic, those were our clientele. But last year we shifted. There's only one of us now. The high schools from 9 to 12 have taken over re-engagement for their buildings, and so I'm kind of floating between all any elementary school that needs me, grade 7 and 8. I connect with these students. I find a way in to figure out what's going on, what's caused them to step away from school. As you can imagine, it's pretty layered. There's all kinds of reasons why, and I would say 98% of the time, in my experience, there's more to the situation. So students have been slowly moving away from school over the years, and then it gets to the point in grade 7 or 8 where they just stop going. So it's not, hey, Roland, come on over to our school. Jimmy's decided he's not coming anymore. It's, can you look into this situation? This student's been on our radar for years, and now they're just not coming. And we know that it's your job to connect with them and figure out how to bring them back.
So, what does that um, generally look like, right? So, I know student gradually starts to drift away, school notices and says, we need to try to get this student back on campus, back to learning, back to engaging in the school community. So, what does that process then look like for you from either a research standpoint, or how do you dive in? How do you start?
That's a great question. And, we're trying to build a protocol for how to start these things off and how to move forward. I find every time we build a protocol, then we have to change it because things just are never seem to work the same way twice. It starts with a referral from the school administrator or the special education teacher in the building. After that, I meet with them and we talk about the ins and outs, their observations, what they know and what they don't know and what they wonder. After I kind of get as much information from the school as I can, I connect with the family. So I reach out to the parents. If the student does attend, then I will meet with them at the school, introduce myself, and basically explain, hey, this is why they've called me in. I want to get to know you as your re-engagement teacher. I want to learn to advocate for you. I want to learn um, to figure out like what is it about you that makes you who you are, and then let's see how we can bring you back to a place in the school where you feel like you're seen, you're included, you're safe. And then we start building. Like I said, every student is different. Some students will be excited that I'm involved. Other students want nothing to do with me. And so basically, because this is a student-centered initiative, I have to look at what the student is giving me, what they're open to, and then find ways to build a relationship in order to move forward, however that looks. So even though you asked me a great black and white question, I can't give you a black and white answer because we joke at St. Don Bosco. That's the name of the school that I'm connected to. We joke that we live in the gray. Everything we do is in the gray because we're working with situations where students, they just don't fit the cookie cutter mold of what K to 12 education supposedly looks like.
Yeah, sure, sure, for sure. I mean, I think it's good though, right? Just starting with the what, where do they want to go? Where do they want to be? What do they want it to look like? Um, do you find as well that there's just a huge variability in the parent level of, I'd say, not just involvement, but like desire for that student to get back? Or do or is it like always parents are fully, we got to get this kid back at school?
That's also a great question, and the parent involvement and the parent capacity is different amongst all my students. I want to add that there's a social worker, a re-engagement social worker, that works with me and the schools and the students to kind of provide them with that component of things to assist the parents, help out with mental health issues and things of that nature. And so they're part of the package. But I would say that in some instances, you can see that the parents are struggling as well. They struggled with school, and this is it's a vicious cycle. And then with other parents, you'll see that they are very much involved, and they want to try to control how things play out, but they can't. Nobody has any control except the student who's making decisions for themselves. So it varies greatly, but I have found that um, some parents are just unfortunately not present because of other layers and other issues that go into this whole thing. School's not a priority because having a job and being able to pay for where you live and bring in food is more, that is the priority. And so it's like um, they're trying to figure things out, and the students trying to figure things out, and there's lots that gets lost in translation.
Do you, so I know that obviously the work is directly with and on behalf of students and their needs. Do you ever then work with the schools to say, hey, we want to start to bring some of these students back. Here's some things we could do differently here at the school. Here are some programs we can bring in. Like, do you work with the school leadership as well to try to adjust the environment in some ways?
Very much so. So once I've got an understanding from the school about the student, then I meet with the student to get an understanding of how they view the school. And there is a very tight connection between myself, the student, the school, and the family. It's supposed to be a collaborative process. So when I go back to the school, I'm advocating for the student. I'm saying, listen, this is what the student's saying. So what can we do here? I never promise a student what is going to happen at the school without talking to the school first. I make that very clear to everybody. So when I'm talking to the school administrator, saying, "Hey, can we try, having the student come in, 2 times a week for an hour in the morning for the next month to kind of get a feel for what's going on?" And then I get a vibe from the administrator. The principal's like, "Yeah, that makes me nervous," or "Yeah, let's try that." And it's always like, I'm not just learning how the student operates, I'm learning about the school culture, I'm learning about the administrator, and I'm trying to remind everybody that this is a student-centered approach, but it's also collaborative. So let's work together. So I'm building relationship not only with the student but with the school, because they need to trust me a little bit, right? They need to see that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and they need to know that I want everybody to be happy in the end. Let's bring this student back, but let's do it as best as we can so that I'm not the one leading the charge, right? It's a group effort. The classroom teacher tells me what they need. The student tells me what they need. I tell the administrator what I need. Like, everybody's constantly communicating and working together and figuring out what is the small step that we need to take to have this student buy in again. It needs to start small, and it has to start somewhere.
I like it. Needs to start small and has to start somewhere. We'll write that down. That's going in the blurb. Um, so
Love it.
so when you're going through this process, obviously, there are some things that work better than others. There are some things that, I feel like just like any teacher, you try a new lesson in your classroom and it just knocks it out of the park, and you're like, okay, that's going in the toolbox, right? That one's we're using that again. So, what are a couple examples of either strategies or programs or things that you've gotten students engaged in that you feel like have really helped bring them back and able to reconnect?
That's a great question. And again, it's varied. With I had one student who would attend regularly, but wasn't interested in the school component at all, to the point where, I'd come in to visit with him, and he's wearing a mask, which is fine, but he's wearing his mask and he's got his hoodie on, and he's sleeping most of the time. It's like, okay, well, let's figure this out. What's going on here that's causing you to try to like hide away from the world? And so with that student, I realized quickly that when we were the academic component, when we were working, and he was struggling with his understanding and lots of gaps in the learning, I introduced generative AI to this student. And I showed him the power of generative AI and how it can help me and it can help him, and how we can use this to make learning a little bit more exciting, a little bit more accessible based on his profile. So that was one really cool thing where I could integrate some of the my love for ed tech, which I used to do in the classroom all the time, into re-engagement. I have other students that, struggle with anxiety. And so I will go to their house and we will go for what I call a walk and talk, right? It's my way of building relationship with them, but it's also getting them out of the house and moving, and not just sitting in their house and worrying and thinking about things that, they obsess over and cause them more problems than they should have. For someone who's in grade 7 or 8, um, I'll communicate with them on social media. So Instagram, Snapchat, I will go there. I will communicate with them in those spaces if that's where they spend their time, so that I can connect, build a relationship, and bring that relationship back to school. So it's all about how do we get back to the learning, but I'm wide open, trying different things and remembering that I'm not a classroom teacher. I'm not living in the school bubble. I'm part of alternative education. I'm part of alternative strategies, and I take that to heart. What can I do that's different, that's still professional, but I can reach out to the student in ways that other people might not or don't have time to.
Love it. Love it. So, believe it or not, we're already there. We're already just about at time. So, before we go, are there people, resources, anything like that you really heavily rely on in your work, or that people that you look up to, and shout those out before we sign off?
I have to say, I lean a lot on the risk taking that I engaged in when I was a classroom teacher. It sounds kind of funny, kind of weird, but when I was a classroom teacher, I was connecting with people like yourself, Joe Marquez, Kyle Anderson, Chris Clough. These are some names of some educators that I've connected with that are innovative, that are open to different things. And I think, what better toolbox or perspective can I have than that, working in a situation where I get a call and someone says, this student hasn't been to school in 2 months. We've tried communicating with them. We can't get to them. Can you please help? And it's like, oh, even when I hear that, I feel this weight on my shoulders. But then I think, it's okay. You have to start somewhere. You have to take some risks. You're going to experience failure. But at the end of the day, all those components are going to come together and lead you forward and make advancements. So, I dropped some names of people that I'm constantly communicating with and have been over the years. It's not so much the people, it's their thinking, it's their ideas, it's their ability to be open, their ability to be innovative. Shout out to my principal, Carla. She is very much into this whole world. And that's probably why she's the principal of alternative education for this school. She believes in giving people second chances, and she believes in actually looking at the situation and for just a minute ignoring all the policy and procedure that kind of hold us down, and says, okay, what can we do here? And then once you kind of start having some ideas and you start having some buy-in from the student and the family and the school, then you can run with it. And when you run with it, you build the relationship. And when you build the relationship, people trust you, and you can bring them back into the fold and start building again from there. I know I took your question, I kind of twisted it, but it's really, if you're an innovative, open-minded person, I'm right there in front of you. I want to hear from you, because no matter what your ideas are, and the weirder they are and the more outside of EDU they are, the better they are for me, because I can build more fluency around those things and integrate them and do what I need to do with them to help the students and the families and the schools in front of me.
Sounds great. Well, Roland, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your stories today.
Thanks for having me. This was a great opportunity. Love your podcast. I've been watching for years and will continue to do so. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever we post new content. Looking forward to seeing you next time.